The mountain ranges of the Tian Shan and the Pamirs are located mainly in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, eastern Tajikistan, and Afghanistan. The Tian Shan and Pamir ranges are the main mountains of Central Asia. Rising up to 7,500 meters, their summits, covered with thick ice crusts, are among the highest on Earth. Enormous glaciers flow slowly through the high valleys. Some are several hundred meters thick. It is a hostile, dangerous zone that can be reached only with great difficulty. These glaciers contain many cubic kilometers of ice. They act as Central Asia's water storage. We're flying to the Pamir Mountains. We're on the way to the place where one of the two lifelines of Central Asia, the Amu Darya River, originates. The area is so remote that it's accessible only by helicopter. This exotic place attracts courageous tourists and extreme climbers. The Pamir still fascinates explorers, just as it fascinated Marco Polo, whose path to China in the 13th century led him through these mountains. We see a plateau at the altitude of 4,000 meters, covered with huge glaciers. The Fedchenko Glacier, currently extending for 77 kilometers, is one of the longest in the world. But even this giant is shrinking. Not only is it getting shorter, but its 1 kilometer thick ice is getting thinner. Climate change leaves visible marks, even up here in the freezing cold. Over the last decades, the glacier has been melting and, as a consequence, has retreated by hundreds of meters. Huge talus slopes give us a vague idea where the ice once was.
The observations clearly show an increase in glacier melt. So we observed that with all measurements we can do. So we have local measurements on certain glaciers, and we do also with the remote sensing methods, we observe many glaciers in Central Asia. And therefore we are confident on our past results, which show a strong decrease actually in glacier volume, about 30% since the mid of the 20th century.
The increasing glacier melt in almost all mountain regions of the world is caused by global warming. This trend becomes particularly evident in Central Asia. The glacier volume has rapidly decreased in the last few decades. We may face a continuous melting of these glaciers. Some scientists predict the amount of water that flows from the Pamirs may decline in the very long run. Annual average temperatures in Central Asia have been rising just like everywhere else. A rise in temperature of 2 degrees seems to be insignificant, yet in fact this trend is alarming. Researchers know that even small temperature changes may have a massive impact on the environment. The same phenomenon can be observed in the mountains of the Tian Shan and Pamirs. The temperatures are rising. The consequences of climate change are already evident. In the short to medium term, there will be more water from glacier melting. But this is not a positive trend, as it is only temporary.
It is important to understand we are not talking about glaciers only. Glaciers are part of the cryosphere system, which is also snow cover as well as the permafrost. And changes in thermal regime of the permafrost can have significant impact to local hydrology, moisture balance, ecosystems, as well as trigger hazards. This is why it's very important to look at the cryosphere in a comprehensive way. Up to date, unfortunately, we have very little knowledge about climate change impact to permafrost in Central Asia. This is why more research is needed.
Glacial lakes are growing larger, and there is a danger they could overflow. Earthquakes and high water pressure destabilizes slopes, causing landslides that can bury entire villages. For example, the tallest natural dam in the world is situated in the Pamir. After an earthquake in 1911, the slope slid down into the valley, which created this dam with a height of 500 metres. For already 100 years, the Murghab River is being retained. Today, the Sares Lake is 56 kilometres long. Most experts consider the dam condition to be safe, but given local seismic activity and glacier melt, slopes above the dam may become unstable and fall into the lake, which could send water over the top. An enormous catastrophe would be the result. When looking at these majestic mountains and glaciers, one feels very small and humble. In the long run, over the next 100 years, drastic changes are anticipated. When there are fewer glaciers, some researchers argue that there will be a reduction in water flow of Central Asia's two big rivers, the Amu Darya and Su Darya.
We also expect into the future now an increase of glacier melt, more or less in all areas of the Central Asian mountains, and therefore there will be a strong decline in the future. So we count about in the middle of the next century that we will reach the so-called peak water actually, which after that, the contribution actually of the glacier water to the river systems will strongly decrease, and finally in certain catchments will completely be stopped.
The consequences of this water flow reduction could be dramatic for the people living in this region.
It is essential to promote scientific research, data collection and scientific cooperation on cryosphere in the countries of Central Asia, between them as well as internationally. UNESCO, through its office in Almaty and its intergovernmental hydrological program, has been providing with such a platform for enhanced scientific cooperation on cryosphere in Central Asia, with a purpose to mainstream scientific research findings into policies so that policymakers can take informed decisions based on sound scientific knowledge and data. It's equally important to transmit this scientific knowledge to the general public and also to communities, including those which are most vulnerable to the impact of climate change.